I never liked being underestimated. Most people didn't notice me when I walked past them, just another face in a crowd. Today, I was dressed in jeans and a simple blouse, carrying nothing but my purse and my sister Lily's shopping list. She chatted excitedly beside me in the taxi, asking me which dress would suit her for the mall. My heart warmed at her innocent excitement, and I smiled. The city was alive with the usual chaos, horns blaring, pedestrians hustling, the constant smell of hot asphalt mixed with roasted chestnuts from street vendors. It was a normal day in New York City, or so it seemed. The taxi hummed along the crowded avenue when suddenly the car jerked to a stop. I craned my neck out the window and saw a police checkpoint up ahead. My stomach tightened, not because I feared the police, but because something about the officer's stance seemed off. Officer Mike, as he would later be known to me, sauntered to the taxi with a swagger that screamed arrogance. He demanded the driver's papers. My eyes caught every detail. The way he squinted as if searching for weakness, the way his hand hovered near his belt, ready to punish the first sign of hesitation. The driver, a middle-aged man whose eyes spoke of endless nights and back-breaking work, fumbled through his bag. I left them at my apartment. I can show you tomorrow, he pleaded. Mike's eyes narrowed. No, that won't do. Unless you want a ticket, give me $200. My hands clenched involuntarily. I could feel my pulse quicken, not with fear, but with something darker, something simmering quietly beneath the surface. I watched, silent, as Mike mocked the driver. His sarcasm dripped from every word. You earned money yesterday. Where did it go? Don't tell me you spent it all. I spent it on my family, the man stammered. Please, sir, I won't make this mistake again. Mike laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. I don't care about your family. Give me the money, or your taxi goes impounded. I remained quiet, calm, observing. Then came the slap. The resounding crack echoed in my ears. I felt every fiber of injustice wrap itself around me like a vice. The driver's eyes widened, lips trembling. He wasn't just being slapped. His dignity, his effort, his very life was being mocked. And I felt something awaken inside me. I stepped out of the taxi. Who gave you the right to do that? My voice was measured, calm, yet laced with fire. This man works backbreaking shifts to feed his family. You slap him, demand bribes, threaten to destroy his only source of income? What kind of law is this? Mike turned toward me, and I saw the first crack in his arrogance. But he sneered, trying to assert dominance. Who are you to speak to me? Don't show attitude, or I'll arrest you right now. I smiled faintly. I am a citizen. I am the law. And today, you are breaking it in the worst way. He laughed then, a hollow, sharp sound, and I let him. Let him think I was just a woman with spirit, but no power. That was the mistake he would pay for. The taxi moved on after a tense few minutes, dropping Lily and me at the mall. On the surface, I smiled, laughed with my sister, helped her pick the perfect dress. But inside, a fire burned. This was not over. I had seen the corruption, smelled the rot, and I knew that today would be the beginning of their reckoning. The next morning, I returned, not as the DA everyone knew, but as an ordinary woman. Green blouse, simple pants, a casual bag slung over my shoulder. I walked into the police station, my heart steady, my mind sharp. Today, I would see the extent of their corruption. Lieutenant Robert sat at the front desk, phone in hand, air-conditioned comfort painting his arrogance in broad strokes. Complaint, he asked lazily. $500 processing fee. Cash only. You brought cash. I blinked slowly, feigning innocence. I thought filing a report didn't cost money. He leaned back, smirk spreading across his face. It does here. No dollars, no report. Go away. Inside, my blood boiled. Corruption laid bare in its most vulgar form. Even here, in the supposed heart of law and order, the rot had spread. I controlled my expression, let my calm mask hide the storm. Where is Officer Mike? I asked casually, as if seeking directions to the bathroom. His jaw tightened. Why do you care? Go find him yourself. I smiled, faint and sharp. I care because someone needs to hold him accountable. Someone needs to make sure the public doesn't suffer under his hands. Robert laughed, a grating sound. You think you're serious? Look at you, you're just a girl. Go, before I throw you out. I stepped back, pretending to consider retreat. Then, with deliberate calm, I pulled out my phone. Internal Affairs, FBI, Chief of Police. I'm at the precinct, I said quietly. Come immediately. Robert's face shifted subtly, annoyance turning to panic, but I remained silent, letting the anticipation build. My heart beat not with fear, but with the thrill of a plan falling perfectly into place. Minutes later, the station doors burst open. Uniformed officers from Internal Affairs, FBI agents, and the Chief of Police walked in. All eyes turned to me. The ordinary woman they had dismissed only moments before now stood backed by authority. Freeze! The command cut through the air, sharp as a sword. The look on Robert's face, priceless. His arrogance shattered like glass. The officers who had threatened me moments ago stepped back, their courage evaporating under the weight of justice. I stepped forward. Calm, steady, booming. Lieutenant Robert, Officer Mike, I said, voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Today, your crimes catch up with you. The chaos that had been your ordinary police station evaporated in an instant. You could feel the shift, the slow, deliberate crushing of arrogance, the opening of eyes to a truth they had ignored for too long. I left the police station that morning, my green outfit blending in with the ordinary crowd, but inside I was far from ordinary. Every step I took on the sidewalk was measured, every glance around me calculated. I was no longer just a woman wronged. I was a predator stalking corruption, and today the prey was the police officers who thought they could treat the public like dirt. I called my assistant quietly, speaking in a low voice. I want every record on Mike and Robert, their complaints, disciplinary actions, pay stubs, everything. Find the weak points. Find the witnesses. Every officer who has ever suffered under them, track them down. And no one can know I'm involved yet. While my assistant nodded on the other end, I walked past the street vendors and honking taxis, blending with the morning crowd. I watched people's faces, their expressions of silent exhaustion, frustration, and resignation. This was the world they lived in every day. I had to make sure Mike and Robert would never touch a single ordinary citizen again without fear of consequences. I returned later that day, still in my disguise, walking into the precinct like I belonged. My heart was steady, but inside, adrenaline coursed like wildfire. Every corrupt officer I passed was unaware of the storm about to hit them. Lieutenant Robert was at the desk, flipping through a file with casual disdain. He looked up when he noticed me. Back again. His tone was mocking. What now? Don't tell me you found cash this time to file your complaint. I smiled faintly. No, Lieutenant. I'm here to ask a few questions. I want to understand the processes here. How is it that bribes are asked openly at the front desk? How is it that Mike and others treat citizens like criminals before any trial or investigation? Robert's expression flickered: anger, annoyance, disbelief. He was used to people being cowed, not questioning him. Who are you to question me? He barked. This is my station. You think you can lecture me? I let my calm tone ripple across the room. I'm just an ordinary citizen, Lieutenant. I want to see the truth. I want to see justice. And I want to make sure no one suffers from corruption again. A slight tremor passed over his face. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it told me everything I needed. They were confident only because they thought no one could hold them accountable. That confidence would be the first thing I shattered. As soon as I left the station that afternoon, I began assembling my plan. It had to be flawless. Mike and Robert were arrogant, impulsive, and cruel. They would make mistakes if baited correctly. I didn't need brute force. I needed precision. I spent hours compiling complaints from taxi drivers, shopkeepers, and delivery men who had been harassed. Recordings of Mike's shouting, Robert's bribes, and their threats. Surveillance footage from previous stops, every improper gesture, every bribe demand. Witness statements from citizens too afraid to come forward, but willing if assured protection. By evening, my plan was almost complete. Every piece was a thread, and the web was about to be spun. The next day, I returned to the station, this time with my assistant posing as a reporter investigating corruption. I walked in slowly, confidently, as though I had a right to be there. Robert noticed me immediately, his eyes narrowing. You again, he sneered. What do you want? I tilted my head, studying him like a chess player examining her opponent. I'm here to see Mike. I have a few questions about his actions yesterday, and I'm recording everything. The words hit him like ice. Recording? Witnesses? Evidence? He wasn't used to scrutiny. Most citizens cowered. They didn't bring proof. Mike appeared then, swaggering toward the front desk, clearly not expecting me. The moment our eyes met, I saw his confidence falter. That tiny spark of recognition, it was fear, masked poorly. Who is she? Mike whispered to Robert. Robert stammered, flustered. I don't know. Just some girl. I smiled slightly, letting the silence stretch. Fear doesn't need words. It grows in the quiet. I began asking innocent questions. How do you decide who to stop? What happens if a citizen cannot pay? How often are tickets given for minor infractions? Each question was designed to provoke. Mike and Robert argued among themselves, their voices rising, revealing their corruption to anyone listening. I let them talk, recording every word, watching their hubris crumble. Then I planted the first bait. I hear there are cameras in the holding cells. Do you monitor them for oversight? or just for threats? Mike's face went red. Robert's hand trembled slightly as he gestured wildly. What are you implying? I let my lips curve into a subtle smile. Nothing. I'm just curious how accountability works here. That's when it happened. A citizen, one of the witnesses I had arranged to be present, stepped forward. Sir, I was here yesterday. I saw how you treated the taxi driver. Mike froze. His face went pale. Robert's hands shook. Their arrogance, their threats, their cruelty. They had never imagined witnesses coming forward. By late afternoon, the tension was unbearable. I excused myself for a moment and stepped outside. My assistant called me quietly. They are ready for the next step. Internal affairs, and the chief will arrive in 15 minutes. Perfect. Timing was everything. I returned, casually sipping coffee, notebook in hand, as if I had come just to take notes. The officers inside were restless, whispering, their nerves fraying. Every glance at the clock, every passing minute, added to the suspense. Then, the doors burst open. Uniformed internal affairs officers entered, followed by the chief of police. Cameras clicked, smartphones recording everything. Mike and Robert's confidence evaporated entirely. Freeze, the chief's voice thundered. The room went silent. Every officer who had previously been dismissive now froze in place, knowing they were about to be exposed. I stepped forward, calm and composed, letting the weight of the moment sink in. Lieutenant Robert, Officer Mike, I said, voice carrying clearly across the room, today you will see that your authority ends where justice begins. Mike's face was white as chalk. Recognition flickered across his eyes. That tiny slap days ago, the one he thought insignificant, flashed in his mind. And now, the woman he had thought ordinary, powerless, harmless, stood before him backed by authority. Robert stammered, tried to justify himself, but no words could shield him from the truth, from the evidence, from the witnesses. His arrogance was gone, replaced by fear, panic, and regret. I let the silence stretch, letting them feel the weight of their actions. Every bribe, every slap, every threat, they were about to pay for it. I gave a subtle nod to the chief. 2 officers stepped forward to handcuff Robert. Mike tried to flee, but he froze at the sight of me. My eyes met his, steady and unyielding. Your day of reckoning has just begun, I whispered under my breath, though loud enough for him to hear. The station fell into stunned silence. Outside, citizens and reporters were gathering, sensing something historic unfolding. And I knew, deep down, that this was only the first wave of revenge. Mike and Robert's fall would not just be punishment, it would be a lesson carved into the bones of the entire corrupt system. I had never felt so calm in the midst of chaos. The officers trembling before me, Mike and Robert, were mere shadows of the men who had tormented ordinary citizens just days ago. But I knew better than to underestimate them. Arrogance like this often hid desperation and cunning. My job was to make them confront the full weight of the law, and I intended to do it in the most inescapable way possible. After the initial handcuffing, the chief of police ordered Mike and Robert to stand aside while internal affairs officers began securing the evidence. I walked among the witnesses I had gathered, the taxi driver who had been slapped, shopkeepers who had been extorted, delivery men threatened with false tickets. Their eyes lit up with a mix of relief and nervous anticipation. They were seeing justice take shape, and I needed them to be ready to testify. I addressed the room, letting my voice carry with the authority I had earned. Every citizen who suffers at the hands of officers like these deserves justice. Today, you will not only see it, you will be part of it. Every threat, every bribe, every act of intimidation will be accounted for. Mike's face had turned pale. He looked around, realizing that the support system he had counted on, his arrogance, his uniform, the fear he inspired, was gone. He muttered under his breath, trying to find excuses, but the evidence was undeniable. Every single witness, every recording, every complaint I had collected was right there in front of him. I motioned for the taxi driver to step forward. His legs were unsteady, but he walked with courage fueled by the hope of justice. "This man," I said, pointing at Mike, "slapped you, humiliated you, and demanded bribes. Speak." The taxi driver swallowed hard. "Yes, sir. He slapped me. He threatened to take my car. I didn't have $200. I told him. He said I was lying, and then—" his voice trembled. "Then he slapped me right here." He held out his hand where the slap had landed. I looked Mike in the eye. "Do you deny this?" Mike stammered. He provoked me. He. "Lies," I interrupted sharply. "Every act you committed has witnesses. Every insult, every act of violence is on record." The room fell silent. The officers who had been mocking the situation just moments ago now lowered their heads, realizing that the tables had turned. Even Robert, who had once sneered at me, trembled. I let the silence stretch, letting the gravity of their actions settle on their shoulders. Mike shifted nervously. Robert's hands were shaking, and every officer present realized that the woman they had underestimated, who they had dismissed as just another civilian, was a force beyond their comprehension. "Do you understand," I continued, "that your actions are not mere mistakes? They are patterns, habits, crimes. You may have thought yourselves above the law, but today you will learn that no one is above it, not even the police." I could see the fear in Mike's eyes, a flicker of recognition that perhaps this was only the beginning. Robert's bravado had completely vanished. His mouth opened and closed, searching for words that wouldn't come. The chief stepped forward, slamming his hand on the desk. "Officer Mike, Lieutenant Robert, you are hereby suspended with immediate effect. Your badges are confiscated. You will remain in custody until your hearing." Mike froze. "See, Chief? Wait, this isn't—" I cut him off, my voice firm and unyielding. "This is exactly what it is. You will face the consequences of your actions. Every citizen you have harassed, every bribe you have demanded will be accounted for." Robert's knees buckled slightly. Please, give me a chance. Wait. "The law does not negotiate with arrogance," I said. "Your chance passed when you began to oppress the people you swore to protect." The officers were led away in handcuffs, and I could hear murmurs of off from the room. For the first time, the officers in that station realized that their actions had limits, and someone was watching. Someone powerful. Someone they had underestimated. I wasn't finished. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about transparency. We organized for the press to enter the precinct. Cameras were rolling, smartphones were recording, and bystanders who had gathered outside were eager to witness the fall of men they had once feared. I addressed the crowd, my voice loud, clear, and commanding. Today, corruption is exposed. Today, those who thought themselves untouchable are held accountable. This is a warning to everyone who believes that authority gives them the right to oppress the innocent. The law is blind to rank, status, and uniform. It answers only to justice. The taxi driver, standing beside me, nodded silently. Relief washed over him, but I could see the mix of disbelief and empowerment in his eyes. Citizens who had suffered silently for years now knew that justice could prevail. Mike was brought forward, trembling, his arrogance completely shattered. I let him look at the witnesses. I let him see the camera. I let him see the chief and internal affairs officers staring with absolute authority. I stepped close, my voice low but firm. Do you remember the day you slapped me? The day you thought I was just another girl? Mike swallowed, trembling. Why, yes. That slap, I said, letting the word sink, did not break me. It exposed the rot in your system. You didn't just hit me, you assaulted the voice of every ordinary citizen who ever dared hope for justice. And today, that day has returned to weigh upon you. Robert's eyes widened. Mike's lips quivered. They could not speak. Their fear was palpable, their guilt undeniable. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and there was no turning back. The cameras captured everything: handcuffs, the shaking officers, the astonished crowd. The taxi driver whispered to me, "I never thought someone would stand for us, someone like you." I smiled faintly. The law exists for the people, not for men like them. Today, you all saw what justice looks like when someone refuses to stay silent. The crowd erupted in quiet applause and murmurs. Smartphone cameras recorded every word, every movement. This moment would be shared across the city, a reminder that even the most arrogant men could fall. As Mike and Robert were led to the squad car, I stepped back, watching them vanish behind the iron gates. But I knew this was only the beginning. Corruption ran deep. There were others like them, officers who thought themselves untouchable. And I would ensure that every single one of them faced the consequences. The station was quiet now, tension replaced with awe and respect. I took a deep breath, my mind already planning the next moves. Revenge was not just about punishment. It was about cleansing the system, showing every citizen that justice is possible, and making sure that arrogance never triumphs again. And in that moment, I knew that my story, and theirs, was far from over. The morning sun streamed through the courthouse windows, casting long shadows across the polished floor. I stood at the top of the steps outside the building, my green disguise swapped for a sharp navy blazer now, an unmistakable signal that this wasn't just a casual visit. Today, Mike and Robert would face the full weight of the law, and I would make sure everyone watching knew what it meant to abuse power. I could hear the murmurs of the crowd gathering, citizens, reporters, and even some officers who had grown wary of the station's corruption. I smiled faintly. Fear had a way of spreading quickly when justice was coming, and today it would strike directly at the heart of arrogance. Mike was escorted into the courthouse, handcuffed, his head bowed. The swagger he had walked the streets with was gone. It had been replaced by a shuffling fear. Robert followed, stumbling slightly as he tried to maintain dignity. Their uniforms had been stripped, replaced with plain civilian clothes, symbols of their fall. I watched them carefully, every movement, every twitch in their hands, every nervous glance at the crowd. Arrogance had a way of revealing itself even when it tried to hide, and they were terrified. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed, microphones hovered, and spectators whispered excitedly. I took my place at the front, standing tall, commanding the room not just with words but with presence. I wasn't just the DA today. I was the embodiment of every citizen they had oppressed. The judge entered, gavel in hand, eyes sharp. Silence fell immediately. Court is now in session, the judge declared. I stepped forward to address the court, my voice steady, unwavering. Your Honor, we are here today because two officers sworn to protect the public chose instead to exploit and terrorize it. Lieutenant Robert and Officer Mike have systematically abused their authority, extorted citizens, and assaulted individuals who trusted the law to safeguard them. Their crimes are not isolated incidents. They are a pattern of corruption and cruelty. The first witness, the taxi driver, was brought forward. I could see him shaking slightly, but the moment his eyes met mine, his courage solidified. Sir, I said to Mike, do you deny slapping this man, threatening to impound his vehicle, and demanding a bribe of $200? Mike's face twitched. He provoked me. I held up a hand. Silence. You will have your chance to speak, but the evidence speaks louder than your excuses. The taxi driver recounted the entire incident, every word etched in the memory of that fateful day. I watched Mike flinch with every detail, his earlier arrogance crumbling like dust. Robert's hands trembled as he tried to whisper to his lawyers, but no words could undo the reality being laid bare. One by one, witnesses stepped forward, shopkeepers, delivery men, even ordinary pedestrians who had once been too afraid to speak. Each testimony revealed another layer of corruption, extortion, threats, verbal abuse, and the casual cruelty of men who believed their authority placed them above the law. With every statement, the courtroom tension grew. Cameras captured every expression, every shiver of fear on Mike and Robert's faces. Citizens watching outside the courtroom or online streamed the unfolding events live, and their murmurs of disbelief and anger amplified the gravity of the moment. I made sure to pace my questions, letting silence follow each testimony. Silence amplifies guilt, and both officers were learning this lesson the hard way. Mike's breathing grew shallow. His lips trembled. Robert's knees shook, and his once proud gaze now searched for escape where none existed. They had been predators in the streets, but here in the courtroom, they were prey. Every citizen present, every camera recording, every word I spoke, became a mirror reflecting their arrogance back at them. You believed your uniforms made you untouchable, I said, my voice ringing through the courtroom. But no uniform can shield a man from the consequences of abusing power. Today, your actions are visible to the world, and justice will not be denied. I signaled, and a projector displayed videos of Mike and Robert in action, slapping, intimidating, taking bribes, laughing at fear. Every detail was there. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Even the officers present could not look away. Mike's eyes darted frantically. This can't be real, he stammered. Robert tried to whisper, it's doctored, false. I stepped forward, voice calm but laced with steel. No, gentlemen. This is reality, your reality, and it will follow you for the rest of your lives. The judge leaned forward, eyebrows raised. This is compelling evidence. It leaves little doubt of systemic misconduct. I directed the final blow. Citizens of this county, I address the courtroom and streaming cameras alike. You have watched how those entrusted with your safety have betrayed you. From this day forward, the law will be your shield. Officers like Mike and Robert will face the consequences, and no one, no matter their title, will have the power to oppress without accountability. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, some whispered tears, some claps. The officers were reduced to shameful figures, powerless and exposed. Their hubris, once their armor, had become their undoing. As Mike and Robert were led to temporary holding cells, I watched them. Revenge had begun, but the system was still corrupt. Other officers had watched, learning the price of arrogance. Some would never recover. Others might try to hide, but I would follow every thread. This was only the beginning. I turned to the witnesses, the taxi driver, the citizens. This is your victory too, I whispered. You have been brave. You have spoken. And today, your voices were stronger than the fists and badges of men who thought themselves above justice. As the courthouse doors closed, I knew the next battle awaited. Mike and Robert would try to use every trick to escape full punishment, and I would have to outmaneuver them again. But this time, it would not just be about arrests. It would be about permanent disgrace, public accountability, and making their fall a lesson etched into every officer's mind. And somewhere deep inside, I felt it, the thrill of revenge fully taking shape, righteous and unstoppable. The morning air was crisp as I arrived at the county jail. The streets outside were buzzing, not with fear this time, but with anticipation. Word had spread that today, two of the most corrupt officers in the county would face their reckoning, and the public wanted to witness it. I wore a simple blazer, my hair neatly tied back. To the untrained eye, I was just another official, but every step I took carried authority. Every citizen watching could sense that today, justice would be more than words. It would be action. Mike and Robert were brought forward in separate squad cars. Mike's eyes darted nervously, scanning the crowd, the cameras, and me. He had hoped to fade into obscurity, to slip away unnoticed. But I was standing there, calm, composed, and relentless, a constant reminder of the humiliation he had earned. Robert's steps were hesitant, his face pale. He tried to maintain dignity, but every whisper from the crowd reminded him that the world had finally turned against him. His arrogance, once a shield, now lay shattered. I walked forward, standing between the officers and the crowd, letting every eye in the square focus on the two men who had terrorized the public. My voice rang out clearly, carrying the authority of the law and the weight of righteous revenge. Citizens, I said, these are the men who believed they were untouchable. They thought that their badges made them above the law. Today, they will learn that power without accountability is meaningless, and arrogance will always fall before justice. A murmur ran through the crowd. Smartphones clicked and recorded. Cameras zoomed in. The stage was set. I began with Mike. Do you remember the day you slapped me? I asked, voice steady but carrying the fire of every insult and every injustice. Mike's lips trembled. I. You thought I was just a girl, I continued, letting each word cut like a blade. You thought you had won, but that slap did not break me. It exposed your corruption for all to see. And now, the world is watching. Every citizen you have harmed is watching. Every corner of this county will know your name, not as a protector of the law, but as a criminal who abused it. Mike's knees weakened, and he leaned heavily on the officer beside him. Robert tried to whisper something, but his voice was lost in the growing tension. I motioned to the officers behind me, and the evidence was displayed on large screens, recordings of Mike and Robert taking bribes, harassing citizens, and abusing their power. Every slap, every threat, every insult was visible to the public. The crowd gasped, whispered, and recorded. I watched as Mike's face turned crimson. Robert's hands shook uncontrollably. The arrogance that had defined them was gone, replaced by fear, shame, and the realization that their deeds were immortalized for everyone to see. I let silence stretch, letting the weight of their actions settle. Then I spoke again. You believed your uniforms made you gods. Today, the law proves otherwise. You are not above the people you swore to protect. You are not above justice. And from this moment on, every citizen will know that their voice matters, and no one can silence it with violence or fear. The chief of police stepped forward, signaling the officers to handcuff Mike and Robert. I watched closely, noting every flicker of fear in their eyes. Mike pleaded, voice quivering, "Please, forgive me, I didn't know." I cut him off mid-sentence. The law does not forgive arrogance. The law does not bend for excuses. You will answer for every citizen you harmed, every bribe you took, every insult you inflicted. Robert's pleas echoed, desperate and weak. The crowd's murmurs intensified. Smartphones recorded, and the story was already going viral in the city. The officers were led away, their badges stripped, their status reduced to mere criminals in the eyes of the law and the public. The orange jumpsuits of the jail awaited them, a visual symbol of their fall from grace. I turned to the crowd, letting them feel the power of accountability. You have witnessed something historic today. This is not just the fall of two corrupt men. This is the rise of justice. Every citizen has a voice, and today that voice has been heard. Never again will arrogance and corruption go unpunished in this county. The taxi driver stepped forward, his eyes brimming with tears. I never thought anyone would stand for us, for me. Thank you. I smiled faintly. The law exists for all of you. Today, you are not powerless. Today, your voice mattered. As Mike and Robert were pushed behind the bars, I felt a quiet satisfaction, but I knew the system still had other rut to cleanse. Other officers had watched, learning a dangerous lesson. Others might try to hide, but I would find them. My revenge wasn't just about punishment, it was about changing the system. The crowd dispersed slowly, some clapping, some recording, all sharing what they had witnessed. Social media lit up with stories of courage, accountability, and the downfall of those who abused power. I stayed a moment longer, watching Mike and Robert being processed. They had thought they were untouchable. Today, they had learned the hard way that justice always finds a way. The doors of the jail closed behind them, but I knew this was not the absolute end. The law needed constant vigilance. Other corrupt officers, politicians, and opportunists still lurked in the shadows. My revenge had begun, but the fight for true justice had only just started. And deep inside, I knew one thing: anyone who abused their power would feel the weight of the law and the fury of the woman they had once underestimated. The sun was dipping low in the sky when I walked out of the courthouse, my heels clicking against the polished stone. The air smelled of rain-soaked streets, and the city seemed alive with whispers of the day's events. Citizens who had gathered earlier lingered, exchanging astonished glances, recording videos, and quietly praising the law for finally asserting itself. I paused for a moment and let it all sink in. The arrests of Mike and Robert were not just victories for me. There were victories for every ordinary person who had been silenced, threatened, or humiliated by those who wore badges like shields against accountability. Inside the county jail, Mike and Robert were stripped of everything they once considered power. Their uniforms had been replaced with orange jumpsuits. Their badges, their titles, their arrogant smirks, all gone. I watched through the glass as Mike slumped onto a bench, muttering under his breath, "If I hadn't slapped her, if I hadn't humiliated that taxi driver." Robert sat beside him, head in his hands, shaking. We were fools. Every step, every word, we were exposed. The gravity of their actions was finally sinking in. They realized that the world did not bend to arrogance, and the law did not forgive cruelty or corruption. Their fear and regret were tangible, almost cinematic, proof that justice had a face, and today it was mine. Back at my office, I began coordinating with internal affairs, the chief of police, and city officials. Today's arrests were only the beginning. Reports, complaints, and evidence from dozens of officers were being reviewed. A purge of corruption was underway, not out of revenge alone, but out of necessity. I called a meeting with the internal affairs team. The system is fragile. Arrogance thrives in silence. We have to ensure that every officer, every precinct, knows that accountability is not optional. Today, Mike and Robert are behind bars. Tomorrow, the law will be seen as a shield, not a weapon in the hands of the corrupt. The team nodded, understanding the magnitude of the responsibility. Today, we had set an example, but the fight for true justice was ongoing. Later that evening, I returned home. Lily was waiting, holding a cup of tea, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Did you really do all that?" she asked softly. I smiled faintly, exhaustion mingling with satisfaction. "Yes, today, justice was served. But this is bigger than me. It's bigger than any single person. It's about showing that no one, not even those who think themselves untouchable, can harm the innocent without consequence." She nodded, clearly moved. "And the people, they'll know." "They will," I replied. "They've seen it. They've felt it. And that is how change begins." Meanwhile, in their cells, Mike and Robert were confronted not just by the law, but by the reality of public exposure. News reports flooded social media, detailing every act of corruption, every insult, every bribe. Their names were now synonymous with disgrace. Mike whispered bitterly to Robert, "If we had only realized, if we had just treated people with respect." Robert shook his head. "It's too late. We underestimated her. We underestimated the law. And now, the city knows our names, and nothing can erase that shame. The fear, humiliation, and regret would haunt them for the rest of their lives. And that was justice, not just punishment, but permanent accountability." I stepped onto the balcony of my office that night, looking out over the city. Lights flickered in buildings, cars honked in the distance, and life continued as usual. But something had changed. A message had been sent. The law protects the people, and the people's voice matters. I whispered to myself, a vow as much as a statement. Arrogance can hide behind uniforms, titles, or fear. But justice is eternal, and I will ensure that no one ever forgets that. The taxi driver returned to the streets, now confident that he and others like him could live without fear. Shopkeepers, delivery men, and ordinary citizens shared the story widely. The arrogance of the corrupt officers had been shattered, and the city breathed a little easier, knowing someone was watching, someone cared, and someone would fight relentlessly for justice. And I, once thought to be just an ordinary woman, had become the embodiment of that justice, a force that no bully, no corrupt officer, and no abuser of power could ever ignore. Revenge, in the truest sense, is not just about pain inflicted. It is about restoring balance. Mike and Robert had felt fear, humiliation, and regret. Citizens had witnessed courage and accountability, and I had proven beyond doubt that justice does not bend for the arrogant, it empowers the oppressed. As I turned off the balcony light, I felt the satisfaction of a long-fought battle. The law had triumphed, the people had triumphed, and the arrogant had fallen. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that from this day forward, anyone who dared misuse their power would think twice, because justice, as I had shown, is relentless, visible, and inevitable.